We all rely on farmers and ranchers, but farming is riskier than other businesses out there. Crop insurance helps farmers manage their risk. With crop insurance, farmers put skin in the game by paying premiums and shouldering deductibles. That keeps taxpayers from having to pick up the whole bill every time disaster strikes. Today, about 90% of U.S. farmland is insured, providing $100 billion in protection to more than 130 different kinds of crops. It's a testament to the program's success.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse Executive Editor Phil Brasher, discussing the week that was, agriculturally speaking, in Washington, D.C. And it's been a while. We had Congress on recess last week. They weren't in town, but a lot of you were. It sure was great to see many of our listeners and viewers and subscribers to Agri-Pulse at our Ag and Food Policy Summit last week. Videos are online at agripulse.com. I would encourage you to check that out. Encourage you to see what some of that discussion was, but also on a much more serious note, another thing that unfolded last week was a series of storms across the Midwest, brought a lot of snow, a lot of water, and has left behind a lot of flooding and a lot of damage to kind of that Missouri River corridor, Iowa and Nebraska in particular. And as such, it's brought back up an issue that has been on Capitol Hill for a little while. It had been festering, was a bit of an issue there at the end of the year, and had gone a little bit dormant, but now it's back. And that, of course, is a supplemental disaster assistance bill working its way across Capitol Hill. It's been brought back up in the Senate now. So, Phil, where do things kind of stand on that disaster assistance bill and potential assistance to affected producers?
Well, talked to the chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and his word was it's still stalled. As of this week, they're done for this week in the House and the Senate. So they're coming back next week. It's really one of the biggest issues still seems to be deal with Puerto Rico. It has nothing to do with the disasters we had in the southeast with the hurricanes and that really hit the producers in Georgia and some of the other southeastern states, the wildfires in California. All of those folks I know are waiting for the assistance that will be in this bill. However, it's tied up, seems primarily over the issue of Puerto Rico and differences between Democrats in Congress and in the White House, and how much more money Puerto Rico is going to get, and how the money that's already been allocated there in previous disaster legislation is being spent or not being spent in the view of many Democrats.
Mm-hmm. So as you mentioned, it's important to note this is not just a disaster assistance bill for the producers of Iowa and Nebraska. There also is hurricane damage from the previous year in the southeast, wildfire damage from California, the Puerto Rico damage lingers as well. So a lot of different political heartstrings being tugged on right now. How does that impact potential chances of final passage, just all of the different things at play here?
Well, this is going to get done eventually. There's tremendous interest in it. There's going to be a lot of dickering here and negotiating because these things are hard to do. One of the issues we haven't talked about yet is we have a sort of a new problem crop up, pardon the pun, with this flooding in the Missouri River, along the Missouri River, where a lot of grain that was stored was flooded out. There really is not provision in previous disaster programs and nothing in the permanent disaster programs to take care of that. So that's one of the issues that's been talked about this week. I know in particular the senators from Iowa are trying to get an allowance for that in the bill. The one thing they have done so far in the draft is they added 2019 to 2018. It was initially just covering 2018 disasters. They now have added 2019, but still some negotiating over exactly what's going to be included in there in terms of provisions.
Mm-hmm. And as that behind-the-scenes negotiation turns into, I guess in front of the scenes, actual legislation and money being allocated, we'll be sure to keep you up to date on what that's going to mean for the agriculture industry in a variety of sectors across the country, as now we've got a number of different disasters being brought into this one bill. But also want to move on and talk about a couple of other things. And as Phil and I were discussing before we press record here on our Thursday afternoon, there's a lot of things that kind of still to be determined. There's a lot of things that are happening that didn't come to any sense of finality this week, but kind of made some progress on that front. And so we'll do a bit of a lightning round here to close things off. And first one, obviously a big topic of mine for the agriculture industry is trade. United States negotiators are in China this week to update another round of talks. And Phil, we're expecting them back in D.C. or in the United States, D.C. in particular, next week.
Yeah, not a lot of guidance coming out of the White House of where things stand. We do know that the USDA team, who's normally involved in these talks, did not go to China. So that means obviously that there's probably not a lot of progress on those particular agricultural issues being made, but they will be back next week. So all we can say is stay tuned. Mm-hmm. But we still appear to be a ways from resolution.
Yeah, another thing that's making its way across the political process right now, the nomination of David Bernhardt to be the Secretary of Interior, currently serving in an acting capacity, was Deputy Secretary before that. Had his confirmation hearing today, but Phil, still some things that need to move forward on that front. And he faced kind of some stiff opposition from one particular member of the Democratic Party. Yeah, one
Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon, who just blasted him over an analysis that has not been released yet, having to do with pesticides and their impact on endangered species. Bernhardt defended himself. Other Republicans came to his defense, and largely other Democrats on the committee stuck to parochial issues. He's not going to get a lot of Democratic support on the floor. He's going to have to get approved with Republican support primarily, if not exclusively, but they have the votes. It certainly appears, and it looks like he's on track to be confirmed.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that's going on, as we speak, really, the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee is meeting right now with the Department of Agriculture. They're meeting Thursday and Friday of this week. It's kind of an organizational meeting at this point, not really looking at the public comment phase of that meeting until some months later on down the road. But was in the room for that this morning, and a lot of the here's what's happening with the committee, here's your mandates, good luck. And obviously that's the issue of the mandate is going to be very important for this particular set of guidelines, because as I'm sure loyal viewers of Agri-Pulse and frequent readers of farm policy information are well aware, the last set of dietary guidelines, specifically the DGAC committee report, brought in sustainability and environmental concerns, and the final guidelines from USDA and HHS did not include such guidance in terms of nutrition policy and suggestions for the American public. That did not get through the Obama administration. I will leave it up to you if it'll get through the Trump administration, dear viewer. But obviously that's a process that's unfolding right now. The little bit of news today was that they would like the committee's report by May of 2020 so they can release the dietary guidelines by December of 2020. And that's kind of their current layout plan at this point. They also announced the dates for 5 more meetings of the committee, and we'll be sure to keep you up to date on what those committee processes unfold and what the committee report is going to look like here as those meetings continue. But I think that's going to do it for this week. So for Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.